Welcome to the deep dive where we kind of go, beyond the headlines. We take all those articles and notes you've been meaning to get to, and we pull out the good stuff, the insights you don't have time to dig for. And today we're diving into the life of Marianne Faithfull. You sent over some articles from the BBC and People magazine, and wow, even just skimming them, her story is something else.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, most people might know her from that iconic 60s image, the As Tears Go By era, and then obviously the whole Rolling Stones connection. But that's really just the beginning.
It's like she lived a few different lifetimes, all packed into one,
Oh.
right? That early fame, all the stuff she went through, and then coming back stronger than ever with this incredible artistic resurgence later on.
It's not just a comeback story, though. It's like reinvention. I mean, throughout her career, she never let anyone put her in a box. She kept pushing the boundaries, collaborating with all these different artists across all these genres, PJ Harvey, Nick Cave, even Metallica.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. You mentioned As Tears Go By, which was actually the first song Jagger and Richards ever wrote, which is wild when you think about it. But what was it about that song at that time that really captured people?
Well, you got to remember, this was 1964. British invasion was in full swing. Everyone was looking for something new, something raw, something different. And as tears go by, with that kind of melancholic melody in her voice, Faithfull's voice, it was almost ethereal. It captured a mood. It didn't hurt that she was just 16. This incredibly striking young woman with a voice that sounded, I don't know, both innocent and wise beyond her years.
And then there's the Mick Jagger connection, which obviously played a huge role in her rise to fame. I was reading his recent tribute to her, and it was really touching. He called her a wonderful friend, a beautiful singer, and a great actress. It seemed like there was a genuine connection there
Yeah.
amidst, all the craziness of their life. Do you think she was a muse for some of those classic Stone songs?
It's hard to say for sure, but yeah, I think there's definitely a case to be made. I mean, you can hear echoes of their relationship in songs like Wild Horses, You Can't Always Get What You Want. But even in the middle of all that 60s music scene craziness, Faithfull wasn't just, a passive figure. She was creating her own image, her own artistic identity.
Which is what I find so fascinating. The 60s were obviously a time of, massive cultural change. But how did she manage to stand out as more than just, like, the rock star girlfriends?
Style was a big part of it. She had this bohemian chic that was like rebellious but also feminine, think Twiggy, Jean Shrimpton. They were the fashion icons of that era, and Faithfull was right there with them pushing the boundaries. But it was
Uh,
more than just clothes. There was this vulnerability in her voice, but also this strength. It felt like she was singing directly to you, sharing her own experiences.
and those experiences, as we know, took a darker turn. The articles mentioned her struggles with drug addiction, homelessness. It's a pretty stark contrast to that glamorous image from the 60s. How did she get through those really tough years?
It speaks to her resilience, that's for sure. The 60s and 70s were notoriously tough on a lot of artists, especially women. The pressures, the temptations, it was a lot. Honestly, it's pretty amazing she not only survived it, but thrived.
Yeah, she did more than just survive.
Yeah.
It's a comeback story for the ages.
Yeah.
If you're digging this deep dive into Marianne Faithfull's fascinating life, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
And then in the late 70s, she releases Broken English, an album that completely changes things. It wasn't just a return to music, it was like an artistic rebirth.
This is where I find her story really takes this powerful turn. It's not just a comeback, it's like this declaration of self. And she gets a Grammy nomination for Broken English.
Mm.
Was it a surprise to see her back in such a raw, vulnerable way?
I mean, the music industry, especially back then, wasn't exactly known for embracing vulnerability, especially from women. But that raw emotion, the depth of her songwriting on Broken English, it really connected with people.
Yeah, it wasn't just music, it was a statement of survival. And it is incredible how her career just blossomed from there. She collaborated with PJ Harvey, Nick Cave, David Bowie, Lou Reed. I mean, it's like a who's who of music legends.
And she crosses genres, which is really impressive. Rock, punk, spoken word, experimental. She did it all. She even worked with Metallica.
Which is, no small feat. Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich actually publicly thanked her for her incredible and unique contribution to music. Shows how widely respected she was across all these different worlds. And of course, we can't forget her acting career, roles in The Girl on a Motorcycle. Absolutely fabulous. She really did it all.
It's that constant evolution that makes her so interesting. She was never content to just, rest on her laurels. She always wanted to find new ways to express herself.
And I think it's that refusal to be defined by one moment, one label, that makes her legacy so powerful.
Exactly. And as her life experiences deepened, so did her art. Her later albums, especially Negative Capability, are really profound. Explorations of aging, loss, resilience, all of that.
I read that it was partly inspired by the 2015 Paris attacks and the death of her friend Anita Pallenberg, who was another figure closely connected to the Stones. It seems like Negative Capability was a way for her to process some really heavy stuff.
It was. What's striking about that album is its honesty. Faithful doesn't shy away from difficult topics, she leans into them. There's this sense of peace and acceptance there, even when she's dealing with pain and mortality.
And she re-recorded As Tears Go By for that album. Can you imagine the weight that song must have carried for her at that point, all those years later?
It's like a full circle moment, you know? The song that launched her career, now infused with decades of experience, the good and the bad. I read that everyone in the studio was in tears when she recorded it.
It's incredible to think about her resilience, how she battled so much, addiction, health issues, heartbreak, but she never stopped creating. Even after being hospitalized for 22 days with COVID-19, she came back and put out another album.
That says a lot about her spirit, right? She was a fighter, personally and artistically. She didn't let anything stop her from expressing herself.
It's really inspiring. And the tributes from other musicians really speak to her impact. We talked about Jagger, but Keith Richards also posted this really heartfelt message, and so many others have spoken about her contributions to music.
She clearly touched a lot of lives with her music and just with who she was. She was a true original, a force of nature. She'll be missed.
So what's the takeaway here? We've covered a lot. From her early days as a 60s icon to her later career resurgence and artistic evolution. What are the key things we can learn from Marianne Faithfull's life and legacy?
I think the biggest takeaway is the power of authenticity. She never tried to be anything other than herself, even when, things were messy, complicated. She owned her experiences, good and bad. And you can hear that in her music.
It's a reminder that it's okay to, be flawed, to make mistakes. It's what you do after that defines you.
Exactly. Her story is a testament to the human spirit, the ability to overcome adversity, find beauty in the darkness, create art that really matters.
And I think it's important to acknowledge her role as a woman in the music industry, especially during a time when it was even harder than it is now.
Oh, absolutely. She paved the way for so many female artists who came after her. She showed that you could be vulnerable and powerful, break the mold, make your own rules.
And she did it all with such style and grace.
Mhm.
Whether she was on the cover of Vogue or performing on stage with that voice that told 1,000 stories, she was a force to be reckoned with.
A true icon. And her music will continue to inspire and move people for generations to come, I have no doubt.
And speaking of inspiration, if you're feeling inspired by this deep dive into Marianne Faithfull's incredible life, why not share this episode with a friend? And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
It's a story worth sharing.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. How did she manage to keep her artistic integrity while navigating, the often pretty exploitative world of rock and roll?
That's a great question. I think it's because she never compromised her vision. She stayed true to herself, to her art. Even when it wasn't popular or easy, she did things her own way, and that's what made her so unique, so enduring.
It reminds us that being authentic is a powerful thing in art and in life.
And it's inspiring to see an artist who refuses to be, put in a box. It makes you want to explore her work more deeply, discover all the different sides of her artistry.
So for anyone who wants to go beyond as tears go by and discover the true breadth of Marianne Faithfull's talent, where should they start? Any albums or songs you'd recommend as entry points?
Well, Broken English, like we mentioned, that's a must listen. It's considered by many to be her masterpiece, a real turning point in her career. But I'd also say check out Strange Weather, Before the Poison, and of course, Negative Capability. Each of those albums offers a unique glimpse into her evolution as an artist.
It's amazing how she kept creating, kept evolving, kept challenging herself and her listeners right up until the end.
It really is. Marianne Faithfull's life and work are a reminder that art can be a source of strength, healing, connection, even when facing incredible challenges. She left behind an incredible legacy, and her music will continue to resonate for years to come.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life and legacy of Marianne Faithfull. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it really is. She took all that, all that pain and hardship, and she turned it into something powerful, something beautiful. Like, her life itself was a work of art.
This seems to be a theme throughout her whole career, right? I mean, from that 60s icon to broken English and beyond, she's always reinventing herself. But at the same time, she stays true to her core vision as an artist. It's fascinating how she managed to do both.
It's like she understood that to really grow, you have to change. And she just embraced that fully, never let herself get stuck, whether it's past successes or failures.
You mentioned negative capability earlier, which is, I think, a perfect example of that evolution. You said it was a profound exploration of aging, loss, resilience.
Mhm.
What struck you the most about that album, especially having followed her career all those years?
The rawness, for sure. It's vulnerable, but there's this new sense of, I don't know, peace, acceptance. There's a track on there, Born to Live, and it's incredibly moving. It's about confronting mortality, but not in like a fearful way. There's this quiet strength in her voice, like she's made peace with it all. The complexities of life.
And the fact that she decided to re-record As Tears Go By for that album, it says so much. That song had been with her from the very beginning, and to come back to it at that point in her life, it must have been so emotional.
It's like coming full circle. But with this depth of understanding that you can only get, I think, from a life fully lived, with all the ups and downs, it's beautiful, really, haunting. And it really showcases how much her voice had evolved, how much she'd grown as an artist.
It makes me think about how her music connected with people from different generations, right? She wasn't just a 60s icon. She was an artist who kept evolving and connecting with people throughout her career. Why do you think her work was able to transcend those generational boundaries?
Honesty, I think. She never shied away from difficult things. Addiction, heartbreak, getting older, loss. She gave a voice to these experiences that, so many people go through but don't often talk about.
And she did it with such courage, such grace. No wonder she inspired so many other artists, men and women. She was a real trailblazer, especially for women in the industry.
Oh, absolutely. She defied all those expectations, forged her own path in an industry that, let's be honest, was and still is tough for women. She was one of a kind, a true original, and you can see her influence in so many artists who came after her.
It's inspiring to see an artist who just refuses to be put in a box.
Hmm.
It makes you want to dive into her work and discover all those different sides of her artistry.
That's what I'd encourage everyone to do, especially if you're only familiar with those early hits. Explore her later albums. You'll be amazed at the depth, the power of her voice, her songwriting,
Oh.
and her willingness to just be raw, to be vulnerable.
So for someone who's, new to Marianne Faithfull, maybe only knows those hits, where would you recommend they start? Are there any albums or songs that you think are good entry points, good examples of that evolution?
Broken English, definitely. Like we said, that's a must listen. It's considered by a lot of people to be her masterpiece, a real turning point. But I'd also say check out Strange Weather from '87. It's hauntingly beautiful, has a real atmospheric quality to it.
What's special about that one?
Well, it's got some incredible collaborations, one with Tom Waits. The song's called Strange Weather, and it's just wow. And then there's Before the Poison from 2005, which was produced by PJ Harvey. It's a bit darker, a bit more experimental. It really showcases her range as a vocalist.
It's like quite a journey.
It is. And of course, you can't forget Negative Capability, her last studio album. So personal, so reflective. You can tell she was grappling with some big stuff. Aging, loss, acceptance. A beautiful and fitting final chapter to her musical story, really.
It sounds like there's something there for everyone, whether you're into rock, folk, experimental, you name it.
Exactly. Marianne Faithfull's music is a treasure trove waiting to be discovered. And I think that's part of what makes her legacy so powerful, so enduring. She wasn't afraid to take risks, to explore different genres, to be vulnerable and honest in her music. And that's something that connects with people on a really, really deep level.
It's a reminder that art can be a source of strength, of healing, of connection, even when you're facing, immense challenges.
Well said.
Well, on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life and legacy of Marianne Faithfull. If you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it's like she could take something painful and make it into something beautiful and meaningful. And that evolution, that willingness to constantly try new things creatively, that's what makes her so fascinating.
Totally. She was never one to just like rehash old hits. There's this quote from her in one of those articles you sent. She says, "I'm not interested in nostalgia. I'm interested in what I'm doing now." And I think that really sums up her whole approach to art and to life, you know?
Yeah, always looking forward, always searching for a new way to express herself. And that's a good lesson for all of us, right? It's easy to get stuck in our routines, but Faithful, she reminds us that real growth comes from, embracing the unknown, challenging ourselves. And you can hear that evolution in her music. Listen to her albums in order, and it's like you're going on a journey with her, all that experimentation, exploration. It's really something.
So for someone who's maybe just discovering Marianne Faithfull, or maybe they only know the early stuff, where would you recommend they start? What are some albums or songs that really show that evolution you're talking about?
We've talked about Broken English, which is definitely essential listening. Such a powerful, raw album, marked a real turning point for her. But to really get a sense of how broad her artistry was, I'd also recommend Strange Weather from 1987. It's got this hauntingly beautiful sound, really atmospheric.
What makes that one stand out?
Well, there are some amazing collaborations on it. Like she worked with Tom Waits on a song called Well, Strange Weather, and it's mesmerizing. And then there's Before the Poison from 2005. PJ Harvey produced that one. It's a little darker, more experimental, really showcases her incredible vocal range.
Sounds like a wild ride through her discography.
It is. And of course, we can't leave out Negative Capability, her last studio album. It's so personal, so reflective, really grappling with those big themes, aging, loss, coming to terms with things. It's a beautiful way to end her musical journey. A fitting final chapter.
So it sounds like there's something for everyone. Rock, folk, experimental, whatever you're into.
Exactly. Marianne Faithfull's music is a treasure waiting to be discovered. And I think that's part of why her legacy is so strong, why it endures. She wasn't afraid to take chances, try different things, be vulnerable, be honest in her music. And that kind of honesty, it connects with people deeply.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that art can be powerful, a source of strength, healing, connection, even when times are tough.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the life and legacy of Marianne Faithfull. It's been a pleasure exploring her story with you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future deep dives. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.